America is getting tough with Benjamin Netanyahu. Why do I say that? Because of what Antony Blinken has said. According to the U.S. Secretary of State, the U.S. may block more weapon systems to Israel if it goes ahead with the ground offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Not just that, Blinken emphasized on the quote-unquote horrible loss of life of innocent civilians. It is a horrible loss indeed. As per Gaza's health ministry, the death toll has now passed at least 35,000 Palestinians. 35,000. This is a serious humanitarian crisis. The Secretary of State also said that he was concerned that any further ground captured by Israel would create a vacuum that's likely to be filled by chaos, by anarchy, and ultimately by Hamas again. Now, before I go on, let me tell you why these statements are extremely significant. This is some of the strongest public criticism coming in from the U.S. government so far of Israel's Gaza assault. So America is getting tough with Israel, but the question is that enough? The thing is, Blinken's remarks do send out a strong message. The message is clear. America will not take lightly Israel's defiance over the Rafah offensive. But is this all that America can do at this point? And will this really deter Benjamin Netanyahu? On Friday, the Biden administration said that Israel's use of U.S.-provided weapons in Gaza likely violated international humanitarian law, but that wartime conditions prevented U.S. officials from determining that for certain in specific airstrikes. And that again was a sign of the U.S. hardening its stance towards Israel. But then the caveat that the administration was not able to link specific U.S. weapons to individual attacks by Israeli forces in Gaza could give the administration leeway in any future decision on whether to restrict provisions of offensive weapons to Israel. According to Blinken, Israel needs to have a clear, credible plan to protect civilians, which, according to him, they have not seen. He also, in fact, warned that Hamas was already seeing a resurgence due to the lack of a coherent, durable plan for Gaza. By the way, Biden on Saturday said that a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war would be possible, quote-unquote, tomorrow if Hamas gave up the hostages seized in its October 7 attack. And Hamas released a statement saying that the remarks by Biden were a setback to negotiations. Let me also tell you about what's happening on the ground. An explosion and several large plumes of smoke were seen rising over Gaza from southern Israel on Sunday as the Israeli military ordered the evacuation of civilians in the southern city of Rafah. Israel sent tanks into eastern Jabalia in the northern Gaza Strip after a night of heavy aerial and ground bombardments, killing 19 people and wounding dozens of others, as per the health officials. So the big question still remains. While America is getting tough with Benjamin Netanyahu, will that deter him? It is the 13th of May, and if you are a cocktail lover, here's a reason to say cheers and sip one perhaps, even on Monday, because it is World Cocktail Day, a celebration of the art of mixology. After all, cocktails are not merely beverages, they are expressions of craftsmanship and flavors. The roots of this day tracing back to 1806. That year, the Balance and Columbian Repository, an upstate New York newspaper, first coined the term cocktail. It described cocktail as a stimulating concoction comprising spirits, sugars, waters and bitters. And where did the word come from? The Oxford English Dictionary tells us that the original use of cocktail was to describe a horse with a tail like a cock's, as in it stays stuck up rather than hanging down. And this would happen when the racehorse was a mixed breed. And this sense of cocktail then came to mean a mixed or an adulterated drink. The drinks were initially inspired by British punches, which contained spirits, fruit juices, spices in big bowls. Then on, it has been a rather interesting journey. In the 1920s, during the era of prohibition in the US, illegal speakeasies proliferated. And what did these clandestine jazz venues serve? Solace and connection, and refuge from alcohol restrictions in the form of cocktails. The decade changed, and the 1930s witnessed the emergence of the Rainbow Room in New York. It was a luxurious club frequented by elite clientele eager to indulge in post-prohibition cocktails. And since then, the club has closed and reopened. It has been restructured and renovated. But it was its revival in 1987 by Dale DeGroff that revitalized interest in classic cocktails and inspired a modern renaissance in mixology. The movement soon spread across the world. It has changed and evolved, become more refined. Today, bartenders, mixologists, cocktail enthusiasts focus on quality ingredients, precise techniques, also creative presentation. They use everything from exotic fruits, herbs, to artisanal spirits and liqueurs to create complex and flavorful cocktails. You see, cocktails have become an expression of art, something to bond over, a vital part of social gatherings, be it a business meeting or a get-together. It's like the Maldives keeps finding a way to humiliate itself every now and then. What has happened this time, you ask? Well, a confession, an embarrassing one at that, by the way. Remember President Mohammad Moizu's India Out campaign? How he had stubbornly insisted that all Indian personnel need to leave the Maldives? Well, guess what? This has come back to bite him. The thing is, Indian personnel did leave, but with them what also left was the Maldives' ability to fly Indian aircraft. And Defense Minister Ghassan Momoon has admitted to it. He has said that the Maldives' military lacks pilots capable of operating the aircraft donated by India. No one in the Maldives National Defense Force is capable of flying them. He said, and I'm quoting now, "As it was a training that required passing various stages, our soldiers had not reached completion due to various reasons. Therefore, there aren't any people in our force at the moment who are licensed or fully operational to fly the 2 helicopters and Dornier aircraft." Why these Indian personnel were there in the Maldives to begin with, you ask? To train Maldivians to fly the aircraft that India had generously donated. But what did Moizu do? He proudly announced that there will be no foreign military presence in the Maldives. He gave Indian troops a deadline to leave. And after many rounds of bilateral discussions, Malé and Delhi did reach a compromise. The Indian personnel would leave the Maldives and a technical crew would replace them. It's a team of civilian employees of Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. There were total 76 Indian soldiers in the island nation. They returned to India in a phased manner. Maldives Foreign Minister Musa Zamir mentioned that 26 soldiers left Gan in March, 25 left Hanimadu in April, and lastly 25 left Katdu in May. As promised, India withdrew presence from the Maldives. Moizu basically achieved what he wanted to, but what did he gain? What was the point anyway? The Maldives still lacks pilots to use the aircraft. What is it if not a shameful display of incompetence? And above all, it still needs Indian assistance to learn to operate the aircraft. Now, I have said this before and I will say it again. Despite his hatred for India, Moizu is left with no option but to come begging for help. He did stubbornly demand that Indian troops must leave, but now his administration is struggling to keep the aircraft in the skies. His ministers triggered a row with their statements on India and the Indian Prime Minister, leading to the Maldives tourism taking a hit. But then the Maldives wanted Indian tourists to return, to the point that a major Maldivian tourism body wanted to conduct road shows in India to lure visitors to the Maldives. The tourism body said it wanted to explore ways to boost travel and tourism cooperation with India. It also admitted that India remains a crucial tourist market to the Maldives. But weren't they aware of this before picking fights with India? It seems Moizu has not learned the lesson, a very basic one at that actions have consequences. That if he takes a decision, he will have to put up with the repercussions and the ripple effect. Unfortunately, he cannot have the best of both worlds. Time now for Gravitas Recall, and time now for a story from this day in history. On the 13th of May, 1981, there was an assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II. Until then, there was nothing extraordinary about that morning. Pope John Paul II was at the St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. It was his regular scheduled Wednesday general audience. The Pope was passing through thousands of people, blessing them from his open Pope mobile, when suddenly there were gunshots. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2 bullets hit the Pope. One hit his abdomen, the other his left hand. Pope John Paul II immediately collapsed. The other 2 bullets hit a 60-year-old American woman, Anne Audrey, and 21-year-old Jamaican woman, Rose Hill. Pope John Paul II was rushed to Gemelli Hospital in Rome. He underwent a 5-hour-long surgery. Who had fired the shots? A Turkish man named Mehmet Ali Agca. He was a member of the extremist right-wing organization Grey Wolves. Why did he try to assassinate the Pope? We don't know. Agca once claimed, in fact, he was following God's order. Just 4 days after the assassination attempt, Pope John Paul II said from his hospital bed that he forgave, quote-unquote, the brother who struck me. How did this episode shape history? It forced the Vatican to adopt new security protocol. Also, the Pope mobile is now bulletproof.